Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today we will be looking at my custom Mezco Rorschach figure. This is my own interpretation of the character. I based the design off of some redesign stuff and then also just put my own spin on things. So I hope you enjoyed this review. As always, we will be starting off with the accessories. So I'm going to take the main part of the figure, put him to the side. I will also remove his head so we can take a look at some of the interchangeable faceplates and whatnot. And now, let's see if that'll stand. Perfect. Let's get to it. I realize my accessories are not centered, so I'll just be picking them up and we'll take a look at them. So we're going to start with the heads first, and then we'll walk through everything else. So starting off with the heads, we have our, what I'm calling the modern Rorschach face. Oh man, what's his name in real life? Now I'm blanking. Oh well, I had it written down somewhere. But anyways, so this is sort of his modern rendition that I came up with. This is just off a Frank Castle head. I just wanted to repaint it, really, and because I just liked the very stern, very gruff nature of the head sculpt. Obviously, as it's been repainted, we have a much redder brown paint on the hair now, and we sort of matched that along with the fade and the facial hair, and the facial hair runs all the way down the neck too. I think I got some really nice depth in the head sculpt, and let's see if the camera will focus on that a little bit more. There we go, you can see it. I really got some nice depth within the creases and in the red in the eyes. You know, he's very tired, he's clearly beat up. He's got his little bandage over the eye, just got some scratches and some blood everywhere. You know, just like in the comics, he's a very gruff, you know, just sort of a hard hitter. He does things on his own. So I really wanted to portray here. He's beat up. He's not a well-off guy, that's for sure. So putting that head sculpt off to the side. Next one we have is, this is much more of his comic version. In the comics, he has some longer hair, still with the facial hair and whatnot, and still with the red hair, reddish orange hair, as you can see here. But I want to do something a little bit more accurate to his to how he initially looked in the Watchmen comics. So here we go. Here I followed along with the facial hair again. You know, also some more like of that pink around the eyes. He's still tired. He's got some scars, some little facial scars here. We used the Ash head from Evil Dead here and just repainted it. And both of these head sculpts are really lovely, just in terms of the detail that's in them. Having a good head sculpt to paint on is really, really nice, especially when I was working on the facial hair and whatnot. So yeah, for both head sculpts, I started off with the black, and then I dry brushed a brown over it, and then after that I took an orange and I dry brushed this light, like transparent clear orange over it. And so that's what really gets you that nice darker brown hair, but you can see still with the highlights of orange in it. Cool. So I'm going to put that off to the side. In terms of his final head sculpt, we have his Rorschach head sculpt here. You know, Rorschach all masked up. And, you know, this is my redesign of the character. I'm not going 100% comic accurate, and I'll explain some reasons why later. But my big thing was, like, I wanted to do sort of a modern and also maybe semi-realistic look for Rorschach. I think that his comic version, just his costume, doesn't make too much sense overall with that big trench coat tied up and whatnot, but we'll talk about that later. But anyways, I wanted to do a couple things. One, I wanted to make the Rorschach head, and two, I was like, well, how do I make the illusion of stuff moving? And I was like, well, quite frankly, you can't, not on a figure at least. So instead, I decided to give him interchangeable faceplates. So this is the Punk Joker. I think the official title for Mezco is Prince of Crime Joker head sculpt. And so is the body for the figure. This is the Freddy Krueger hat here. And then, so what I did, and you'll see when I pull off this head sculpt, it's a little, there we go. The magnet's kind of tight, so you really got to dig your finger under that. But as you can see, this was the old Joker head. You can see a little bit of his smile there. You can see sort of the edges of his eyes and a little bit of his eyebrow up there. But I sanded down the whole face flat. And then I also dremeled in and placed a magnet in there. And the reason why it had to be flat was I needed a smoother surface to make the mask faceplates on. If I left him with his nose and all his mouth and everything, it would protrude so much farther out, and it really wouldn't look like Rorschach. So I smoothed it all down so that I had that extra room to work with. So, that being said, I sanded everything down. I also clearly sanded off all his hair and his ears. Everything got wiped away, like brought it down to the bare bones. His hair was up here, and so what I ended up doing is dremeling out this top section to just generally what I feel like would have fit the top hat. And then I also drilled a hole in there and put a magnet in there. There's some super glue over the top so that it doesn't pop out with the interchanging of the hat. Just because, and I'll explain why the hat has to be on a magnet later. But just some super glue up top, which is why the magnet's not as shiny as this one is. So then once I dremeled everything down and made that room for the head, then I had to work on the face area. You know, how do I get this white? How do I get the interchangeable faceplate? So I already knew I had the idea of putting the magnet sort of where the nose was, and I was like, okay, that's my base. So the next thing was I have to create a frame for my head sculpt to be around. So I sculpted all of this in here. The reason why we have this lower edge right here is I already had the hat, and you'll notice that the hat just sort of tucks in. Oops, the hat's backwards. You'll see that the edge of the hat tucks in right there. So I already had the hat and I was able to fit it. But, you know, this cut was a very general cut. Clearly, this is way larger than the actual round of the hat. So I just tossed in some sculpt, slapped a magnet in there, and just pressed it in to match it. And so now we have that, and it works out really well. Also, got a little purple flap there. Rorschach, there's a lot of purple on Rorschach in the original comic, and so I just had to find ways to pay homage to that, so added a little purple in there. And there's more just little bits of purple throughout the figure, and we'll see that later. But yeah, obviously the Freddy Krueger hat got repainted since we're here. Gloss black on the band, very Rorschach, and then obviously just like sort of a dirty dry brown, leather brown on there. So cool. So yeah, put the magnet on there. And once again, we'll talk about why that magnet's important. But we have it there. That's how we got there. In terms of the face, I just had to cut a symmetrical edge, or a relatively symmetrical edge. I'm pretty sure this is pretty one-to-one. It looks pretty even up top. But yeah, just had to get an edge. There's honestly, you don't need a huge amount of accuracy for this, and the reason why is because the faceplate comes around the edges, so like you'll never really see the full edge on either side when a faceplate's on. So it was more about, you know, just getting that general framing that it's relatively the same size. So then once I had that here, right, once all of this is hardened out, I did that. Then what I did was I put a magnet. I put the opposite facing magnet on, and then I put my sculpt over it. And so all that is just putting the magnet on, taking a blob of sculpt, and then just smoothing the blob of sculpt to fill in the space here. And then what I did after that was I took my X-Acto knife and I just traced the edge of my mask there to get that cut, that separation, and then I just let it harden. And so right now in the process, we just have a smooth white, or not even white, it hasn't been painted, we just have a smooth faceplate here. The reason why we have to cut this edge is because we're going to peel the faceplate off at the end of it with the magnet on it. And so I don't know how other epoxies work, but Procreate sculpting putty has flexibility to it, and that's really why I love it as a sculpting material. It is not extremely hard, but it will hold its shape, but it has some flex, there's some give in it, and what that give allows you to do is actually peel things off and have it retain their shape, which is exactly what we do here. So right now we have the magnet in, we have this smooth faceplate, and so what I did was, once this was cured, I came at it with a heat gun, started warming up the sculpt, you know, just softening it, giving it some flex, and then I just took a little sculpting tool. You could really use anything that you can just get some leverage on it. And I just dug into there and I just sort of peeled it off. And then with the heat, and you just got to be a little bit patient with it, but it works, I was able just to peel off the faceplate. So now we have a magnetic faceplate, and obviously I made 2 of them, as you can see there. So before we get into sculpting this, which there's really no technique, you just sort of have to wing it. The reason why the top hat is magnetic is because you'll see that the brim of the top hat covers that sort of top edge of the faceplate. So therefore, the only way for us to have interchangeable faceplates that are flush with the hat is to make the hat magnetic as well as the faceplates, so that you can get that covering of someone actually looking like they're wearing a top hat. Because imagine trying to just match the top of the hat's curve, trying to match something that will slide under there. It makes no sense and it wouldn't look good. So instead, what I did was I sanded the inside of the hat so that there's a little bit more flex room for the faceplate, and then made it magnetic so that it sits on top like that. So then it really does look like the head runs all the way up into the hat, because it does. So then you pop the hat off, it's magnetic. You pop the faceplate off, interchange the faceplate, magnet the hat back on. Everything is steady. So that's how we do it there. So now in terms of actually sculpting faceplates here, there's no way to do it. And what I mean way to do it is that there's no here is the step-by-step way to sculpting something 100% symmetrical. You really just got to take your time with it. And honestly, mine are not 100% symmetrical, but they're sort of on that level of very, very close and close enough that you're really not going to be able to tell. So you just got to be able to sort of get your accuracy right. And, that was just the same thing as the face here, the edges of the faceplate. Yeah, unfortunately, that's really what it does come down to, is you just sort of have to wing it enough and just hope that your cuts and your eye is good enough. And that's something that just sort of comes with experience. Unfortunately, I can't give you a helpful technique of I guess you could use an actual ruler and you could sketch all your measurements and placements out and whatnot. I did do a general rough sketch on my clay of what I wanted my sculpt to look like. I had it envisioned and I knew generally the proportions of it. So you can do that. That'll help you. But yeah, a lot of it is really just being good with your X-Acto knife, being good at sculpting, and being able to sort of eyeball those proportions. In terms of the thinness, though, you'll notice that the black I have on the mask is sculpted, and it's very thin. It's very, very paper thin, as you can see. It's almost flush with everything. Yeah, I wanted it to be paper thin because I wanted it to look as much a part of the mask as I possibly could. But I'm not good enough, nor did I consider it worth attempting to try to paint this thing symmetrical. If I just painted it, I feel like I could easily mess up and then it would just go totally haywire. So I didn't want to risk that. So yeah, I decided to sculpt it. And just sculpting something paper thin is really just down to pressing your sculpt really flat and then just cutting your edges away. Because, if you've ever sculpted, you'll know that pressing your sculpting putty down means it just sort of spreads out everywhere. So then you just have to get your X-Acto knife and just trim it off to where you want it to be. So that's how I did that. There you go. I wish I could give you guys more techniques and whatnot, but that's about all I can do in that regard. Just get some practice under your belt. Try it out a couple times. Thankfully, with sculpting and with faceplates, if you can get the faceplate part down relatively easily, you can just make 1,000 of these. I only made 2 because I felt like these are 2 just relatively Rorschach-esque face masks. And there's 1,000 different versions that he looks like in the comics. And so I was just like, what are the 2 most generally popular looking? I'm going to run with those. So now in terms of the rest of the accessories, Rorschach is not a guy who comes with much. He doesn't use much in the comics. Really, the only prominent accessory he has is his grappling gun. So looking at the grappling gun, I was sort of split on what I was going to use. I either wanted to use the Ascending Knight Batman grappling hook or the Justice League Batman grappling hook. I ended up settling on the Justice League Batman grappling hook because it definitely has a vintage look. I like the wood on the handle. Let me get my camera to focus just a little more. There we go. I like the wood on the handle. Yeah, it just definitely has a little bit of an older feeling. And Rorschach comes from a very, sort of classic, what is it, Golden Age? I don't know. Golden Age, Silver Age of comics. He's from that era. And so having wood on the handle, just having it a little bit more rustic, a little bit more mechanical made a lot more sense, despite me going for a little bit of an updated version of the character. So the grappling gun itself, I got some paint in there. Painted the little extra grappling hook, a little bit of a brighter silver. Did just tiny little bits of detailing, nothing really to speak about hugely. It just is. It's here. We're going to put it off to the side. Now, we were, I mentioned how I wanted to use the Ascending Knight grappling hook. And the reason why is because the Ascending Knight grappling hook has these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful large prong grapple. And I loved that because it makes the most sense. The Justice League Batman has this super tiny little grappling hook. And it's like, well, what is that thing going to dig into realistically? Like, how is it going to grab anything? So I liked the idea of a much more large prong. Also, it definitely also feels like old tech. This thing just doesn't look as sleek, doesn't look as modernized. And so I ended up taking the Ascending Knight grappling hooks. And thankfully, all the Mezco grappling stuff is generally the same size. And so I ended up using it. And it worked. So that's why I had sort of the debate earlier between Ascending Knight and Justice and Batman Justice League. But they fit. They plug in perfectly. So we are using the Ascending Knight grappling hooks, and thankfully I still have the one on the string all packaged up, so I didn't have to worry about that. So that's what I ended up going with for a very classic look from both ends of the grappling hook, both the hook itself and the gun itself. So now in terms of hands, I painted all the hands relatively the same, and we'll look at the fisted hands in a second because they're on the figure. But the other hands that the figure comes with, I also used the Justice League Batman hands. And so taking a look at these right now, here we have his open hands. They got painted all matte black. Then there's a little bit of a dry brush of a gray. The knuckles have gloss black on them just to sort of denote that they're like a harder plastic or maybe even a metal. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but the hands are also dry brushed with a little bit of purple. And let me get the camera to focus here. Let's see if you guys can see it. Oof. Focus for me. I don't think I can get any closer to the camera than that, unfortunately. Okay, let's back it out. I don't know if it's... Ooh, camera shake. I'm using a different stand, and sometimes tapping the screen too much makes the stand wiggle a little bit. There we go. You can kind of see it. You can kind of see it right in there. I don't know if it's coming out for you guys, but there is a dry brushed purple in there, and it's the same tone of purple that was on the hat, and it runs throughout the hand. Yeah, I don't know if that's coming out. Hopefully you guys can see it. In real life, you can see it. It's very faint, but once again, sort of trying to apply the purple into the gloves, and then we have his grappling hook hand. And oh, I think that's a little bit clearer on there. You can see sort of the dry brush purple throughout the top of the hand and also in the fingers. Hopefully. I don't know if it's there. I don't know if you guys can see it, but if you can, it's really cool. It's just very subtle. Okay, so now we're going to come to the body of our masterpiece right here. And I got to do some fun stuff with this guy. So I'm going to take our Rorschach head, plop it on top, and then we will get to have a look-see at Rorschach. So here is the figure finally completed. Where should we start? I think we're going to start with talking about the layers of clothing, because I think that's overall pretty important. So he has a lot of layers, and firstly, we are using the Joker Batman, the Prince of Crime Joker figure, and we're using a lot of other parts too. In order to get everything the way we wanted it to look, obviously these are just the Joker pants, nothing's been replaced there. I also liked the Joker body over some other bodies because of these boots. I like the fact that the laces are a little bit untied. Punisher felt too tactical. I was thinking about using the Punisher figure, but ultimately the Punisher just felt too tactical. His pants didn't have the right vibe. I liked the pinstripe look of the Joker's pants because in the original comics, Rorschach does sort of have a pinstripe pattern too. And so when I painted these gray, the black stripes still show through. And so he still has a pinstripe pattern to his pants, despite them being, black and not necessarily as like purple, which is good. Purple pants are gross. I'm sorry, Rorschach, but I couldn't do it to you. So we're using the Joker figure. what else is going on here? So we have our gloves. I guess I'm sort of gonna start on the outside and work my way in because this is a very layered figure. So starting with the outside, first of all, we have his fisted hands here. Let me get the camera to focus on that again. Oop, there we go. As you can see, a little bit of red on the fists there. He's been bloodied up. He's been punching people. The tops of these gloves are from I believe it's the Kick-Ass 2 armored Kick-Ass figure. Pardon my language. It's the title. This is family friendly. If you guys are okay with that name, I apologize. But yeah, that's where it's from. So that's how we got these nice little, very realistic looking gloves. And I gotta say, painted, they look like they belong with the Batman hands, which is sort of just haphazard luck. Thank goodness. I guess good choice in parts. This jacket out here, this is from the Netflix Punisher figure. We also are using the Netflix Punisher head. So, sourcing parts, trying to keep everything relatively together. For now, at least, once we get into the layers, you'll realize it's not so much. But because this jacket is black, it gives us this really nice undertone, and I like that the stitching's all black and whatnot. So then what I ended up doing was I took leather brown Angelus leather paint. Also, if you guys don't use Angelus leather paint, get on that. It's a little bit pricey, admittedly. However, it is the most flexible acrylic paint. You can hand paint it. You can spray it with an airbrush. It's beautiful stuff. It's super smooth. It layers nicely. If you maybe watch a couple videos on how to apply it to fabric, just so that you sort of get an idea. But man, the stuff is durable. I'm using the Angelus paints. I mixed a dark gray for the pants. I'm using it on the pants. I'm using it on the coat. It's flexible. You can rub it. You can flex it around. There's no crack. There's no peel. It's wonderful. I wish I was sponsored because then I could earn some money off of saying that. But it's great. It really, really is just great, great stuff. So yeah, look into it. It's totally worth it. So we sprayed... actually, no, I take that back. We didn't spray. We sprayed for other stuff. We actually hand-painted this just so that it has a little bit more of a worn, rustic look. And if I turn it to the light, you can really appreciate that leather brown in there. And it fades to black at the bottom. It's a little bit dirty, a little bit mucky. Rorschach in general is just a very dirty figure. And going along with that, I was definitely sort of thinking of what is like a homeless dude in the winter sort of wearing. He just has a bunch of raggedy coats on just to keep him warm. And we definitely stuck with that theme. We have this second sort of like longer undercoat here. There's buttons all the way down. So clearly it's probably like oversized and whatnot, which makes sense for Rorschach. He's scrapped together. This guy's not rich. But we have this coat. Obviously, there's a lot of layers and there's a lot of flexibility in that it's sort of this brownish gray color. Once again, dirty, but still retaining its original color. And so this was actually the Nosferatu coat. I made a vampire a while back and we never used the coat for anything. And originally I was going to throw it away. My girlfriend actually said, hey, you should just keep it. I know the coat's long and oversized. There's no other Mezco figures that height that would fit it. Because he's sort of like, Nosferatu's like really skinny and really tall, just a very lanky figure. But she convinced me to keep it, and thankfully we were able to finally repurpose it into something. And so we have the coat in here. This was, obviously the Nosferatu coat, I think is sort of like a brownish, like sort of a light brownish color, roughly, generally. Lighter than this jacket for sure. So I sprayed it a gray, just sort of roughly, and then also just sort of gave it a little bit of wear and tear, sort of dirtied the edges and whatnot. And then, I still wanted to keep the Rorschach idea of how his coat's sort of tightly buttoned up. But the reason why I didn't do this outer jacket buttoned up wound up with the belt here is, yeah, that looks pretty classic, but have you ever thought about moving in it? Like this, it limits the leg articulation so much. And I was like, I don't want to limit his posing. Like, he literally couldn't do anything. And if you think about it in real life, like, that's exactly the way the character would be too. Like, even if we move these up, like, he just gets stuck on it. And so I didn't want to do that too much. And granted, the Joker's kick without the layers isn't very much higher. You can extend it a couple degrees more. But I was just thinking about that, and I was like, that would get really in the way of him moving, being bundled up like that. Yeah, it looks cool and whatnot, but it makes no sense. So I was like, you know what? He's going to have this outer jacket loose, keeps him warm, but he gets a lot more movement, even with the arms. If you've ever worn anything tight and then you're trying to punch and move around, like having this jacket suck up around you just means you're not going to get as much movement. You know, the fabric's not moving, you're not going to be able to stretch out as far. So I was like, you know, for functionality's sake, we're going to really think about the character design here. We're going to leave it untucked, still very Rorschach, still very homeless looking. No offense to anyone out there. And, you know, still makes sense for the character. So we have the Nosferatu coat. Because of layers, we actually cut the sleeves off of the Nosferatu coat, and you're really not going to be able to see it because I'm not going to be able to pull the jacket far back enough, just because I don't feel like taking the glove edges off and peeling off the whole coat. But the sleeves are cut off right about there so that he still has a nice, good full range of motion at the elbows and the arms and whatnot, so that he can extend and he can rotate all the way around and stuff like that. If we had the coat sleeves in there, he would not be able to achieve as good of a range of motion. So the sleeves are cut off there. In terms of these buttons, well, how'd you do the buttons? Well, the first thing I did was, well, it's the coat. I wanted this one to be buttoned up, so I just super glued it in. And then all these buttons, if you've customized for a long time, and if you customize Marvel Legends, you know you'll have a bunch of extra joint pins laying around. I cut off the ends of these pins, painted them chrome, like this chrome silver, and then super glued them on. That's how you make buttons, and it works because he has buttonholes. So I just matched the buttonholes with it. And yeah, you have buttons, and there's another, I'm working on an Arkham Knight figure, or I guess technically as of this review, finished an Arkham Knight figure. And I used the button idea too, so you'll see that later on. But yeah, that's how you make buttons, for anyone who is wondering. Make buttons for your Mezcos, give it more detail, give them buttons. Paint them whatever you want, but if you want, you know, just easy, perfect, generally perfect circles, Marvel Legends pins, just cut the tips off. And just make sure they're all the same size, obviously. So now for this scarf, this is just a pattern piece of fabric. I cut out like just sort of generally a triangle, and then what I did was I pushed part of it into the vest. Also, the whole vest and whatnot under Joker is, oh, you're not gonna be able to see it from here, but you can see it up here. I painted it all black because I still wanted to make sure the layers were accurate, and that, you know, however much you flex this guy, there wouldn't be any revealing of his original colors. So yeah, just sort of for the detail's sake of it, under there is also black, even though you're probably not going to see it very much. You know, we tuck his coat up. You're not going to see it, but it's still completed. But anyways, the scarf, it's tucked into the vest, and then it's also tucked into the space around his neck. Because this is the Joker figure, you know, the head, you know, it plugs into this neck peg down there. So it's all super glued down into the bottom so that the scarf is consistently the same place and stays the same measurements. So that's how we got sort of the fluffy scarf look right there. So let's see, we've looked at everything. Also, the gloves do have some purple in it. I don't know if you can see it. The camera will focus. I don't know if it'll change anything. Hard to tell. You can tell it in person. Unfortunately, it's coming off really gray in this camera, but sort of like this lighter gray portion that you're seeing there in real life is a very subtle purple. Darn. Too bad. I wish you guys could see it and appreciate it. But anyways, we're going to move down to the pants now. We've talked about it already. We were able to preserve that pinstripe pattern, which is awesome, and I'm glad that the camera's picking it up. I think it's super dope. So yeah, this is sprayed in sort of a very, very dark gray, and then I also dirtied it up with some brown. You can see some brown around the knees and just sort of around the creases. You know, he's been in the water, he's been in the rain, he's been running around, New York or something like that. I haven't read the comics in a while and stuff, but yeah, he's been in and out. He's been there. And then we have the boots. I glossed up the boots. I was going to paint a little more detail on them, and then I ended up just dry brushing some dirt on it instead and just sort of caking and covering everything up. Because I was thinking about, Rorschach's not a flashy dude. He's not going to have like bright silver aglets, which are the little circles, in case you didn't know. He's not going to have bright flashy laces, so they're just sort of like a black gray. They're slightly more flat than the boots are. And then yeah, so I was just like, whatever. This guy's not flashy. He's just got some boots on. He's quickly just laced them up. He's heading out there. And also for the boots, you know, just to keep with that idea of the purple. Once again, I don't know if it'll show through, but there is purple on the boots, and the purple is actually a little bit more pronounced than anywhere else just because it's contrasting against the gloss black, which makes it a little more visible than matte black. Yeah, I don't know if it's coming through. Oh, you can see it a little bit right there. You see, it's very subtly purple. It shows through a little bit in the light, so hopefully you guys are getting that. But yeah, so there we go. That's the figure. Those were some of my design choices. I know they're definitely interesting. I'm sure some people would love to see him with the belt and see him all tucked up. I just think it looks, actually, when you even look at it in terms of layers, it looks very thick. Like, this is where his head is, and he's, you know, in terms of proportions, there's probably about like another, what, 6 to a foot? 6 inches to a foot of like extra fabric now sticking out off his chest, you know, to this point. And granted, I know, you know, cloth in 1/12 scale is a little bit thicker and whatnot. But still, you know, it looks too chunky. I wanted to keep his frame down, and this definitely helps. You know, having this contrast of colors and also having the coat loose definitely makes him feel not just sort of like thick boy Rorschach here. I think that looks a little too heavy. You know, he just loses all his frame. At least now with the gray, you can sort of tell where the sides of his body are. And you can tell that it's not just all him filling out that space. So, those were my design choices. Take it or leave it. I know it's not as like classic as it could be, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Please stand. There we go. So, focus that. So that's my review for Rorschach. I really enjoyed making this guy. There was a lot of little technical challenges. One of them was, you know, just planning out his look. Not going directly with from the book Rorschach meant I had to make a couple little decisions along the way, you know, including, you know, how many layers is he going to wear? Originally, I was going to not have the Nosferatu coat, and it's just going to be, you know, sort of like Joker vest and suspenders with the jacket over it. But then that didn't feel full enough and very, you know, sort of like layered coat-y enough for Rorschach, so we ended up adding the Nosferatu coat. Oh, another thing I just forgot to mention, the Joker wrist peg is ever so slightly too small for the Batman hands. So I don't know if my camera will focus on this. So I did actually just put some super glue. Excuse me. Ooh. I had to put some super glue around the ends of the wrist pegs, and that gives it the extra tension it needs. And so the hands interchange nicely and they hold nicely. So, you know, if you're planning on recreating this in any way, or if you just want to, you know, sort of use the idea of different sized wrist pegs, just put some super glue on the ends of them or around the sides of them really, and that'll just give it some extra friction. So, thank you guys for watching this video. I think the camera stopped there for a second, so we're back. But thank you for watching this review. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to film and to make this figure. I really like him. I think I got a lot of details out of the character, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you guys learned something just about character design or anything about, you know, how to create these figures. And if so, if you want more content, obviously check out my other videos. Please subscribe to the channel. I don't have an upload schedule. I just upload when I can. But with that being said, I try to make quality figures and upload quality reviews and sort of breakdowns of them. So yeah. Also, if you want to see more of what I'm doing a little bit more consistently in terms of the figures I'm making and the stuff I'm doing, follow me on my Instagram. My username will be in the description of this video, and I do have a link in the About section on my channel, so please check me out there and give me a follow if you please. And that is all I got for this guy. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day, because it is sort of the end of December. Also, happy holidays. And I hope you guys all stay safe and stay healthy. And hopefully have some good time with family and friends and whatnot. So yeah, I'll catch you all later. Take care.